Thank you very much. It is great to be with you. I want to thank you, John, for your great leadership of this wonderful organization. Also, special thanks to your Executive Director, Bud, who does such a wonderful job always. And I do want to thank all of you for coming from wherever you came from to Washington, D.C., which I've been back here for about 19 months, and I've heard D.C. described as 1 square mile surrounded by reality. And your presence here today is fortuitous because what it means is that you're bringing a little reality to Washington. Now, I was thinking about what I was going to say to you today, and I kind of want to frame it. And my staff sometimes gets a little impatient with me because I will often make sports analogies, which are oftentimes not the best analogies, but you talk about what you know. And so I'm going to use a bit of a frame here for what I really want to say to you. So one of my favorite coaches in all of college basketball is Mike Krzyzewski. Great coach of Duke University basketball team. Love him or hate him, the guy knows how to win. I once heard a speech that he gave about coaching the USA basketball team. And I just want to sort of relay a little bit of it because the basic frame of it is that he's got these great big basketball players that are making millions of dollars, and he's got them on a team, and they've got to figure out how to actually be a team to win a gold medal. And so he's trying to figure out how you get them out of the context of playing professional basketball into the context of playing for your country. And he says, I knew that context was important, because if we didn't have the right context, we weren't going to have the right outcome. So he gets the team and he brings them up to Washington, D.C., puts them on a bus, and they go and they visit one of the VA hospitals. And they spend time with some of our veterans, folks that have been fighting for us overseas, talking to not only the veterans but also to their families. And by the end of this conversation, there's not a dry eye in the room. These big, strong, husky millionaires are literally in tears because they're hearing about the sacrifices some of our heroes have made. And so they get back on the bus, and everyone's kind of quiet, waiting for someone to say something. And then the coach gets up and he says, "Now, I want you to remember that when we're playing in these games, what's on the front of your jersey is more important than what's on the back of your jersey. That you're playing for them, and you're standing up for our country in playing in these games." And so that became the context that the team saw their effort. And it wasn't about the individuals, it was about playing for the country. Well, we've got a context problem in transportation. And the context is that I don't think all of us collectively have done the best job in shaping the context in the most hard-hitting, clear way. We say the same things, that the country's infrastructure is crumbling, that we need to do something different, we can't have these extensions anymore. But all of those things are in the context of this sort of political frame in Washington that doesn't necessarily respond to what you have to respond to out there on the ground. When a bridge crumbles, or when a project gets slowed down, or when you're not able to get something done, that's an entirely different set of challenges that you face, because you know that the system itself is going to suffer if it doesn't get addressed. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about the context that we have in transportation. Just a few weeks ago, we released Beyond Traffic. This was our latest effort. I think there have been 4 or 5 in the past the U.S. Department of Transportation has undertaken to basically look at future trends in transportation. And the goal of this effort was, number one, to start having a real conversation about where we're headed, and number two, to start filling in some of those blank spaces in the top lines of the messages we've been delivering for a while. What's really wrong? What happens if we don't address what's wrong? And what are some of the choices we face going forward? Well, there's a lot of information in there, but some of it is pretty overwhelming. We're going to have 70 million more people over the next 30 years. Truck traffic is expected to increase by 60%. We've got bottlenecks that are increasing in parts of the country. I was at one in the bus tour just last week in Columbia, South Carolina, an intersection of I-20 and I-26 they call Malfunction Junction. And then, as I was talking about Malfunction Junction, somebody said, well, we got one in Alabama. And I said, well, you know, I'm sure there's a Malfunction Junction in every state in the Union. And yet we have learned just to live with it. But the problem we have is that if we just keep living with it, at some point those travel times are going to grow from 30 minutes to an hour. At some point it becomes a drag on the economy. At some point these communities that depend on these roadways as a lifeline will be trapped by the very thing that is supposed to open up opportunity. And so in some ways, beyond traffic is a way of defining the problems, not necessarily dictating solutions, but really putting a precise finger on the problem. I last saw you in November, just a few short months following Congress's last-minute action to avert a highway trust fund crisis. And I had hoped that by the time I saw you again, we'd be in a position to celebrate the fact that we were able to move on. Unfortunately, I'm standing in front of you now with just short of 3 months before the next highway trust fund crisis, the end of May 2015. And I've heard it said that where you stand depends on where you sit. And there are many issues on which we sit in different places, federal to state, state to local, Republican to Democrat, urban to rural, just to name a few. But on this issue of where the country's headed, what we need to do, we are all sitting in the same place. I can't help you if Congress doesn't act. If I can't help you, you can't help yourself. And the citizens of our country are going to be stuck in traffic. So, because we're all seated together, now's the time for us to stand together and to go out and make sure Congress understands the critical importance of this moment in time. I agree with what John said. I think there is a moment that is shaping up here where something good can happen. And what good could that be? It needs to be a long-term bill that really meets the needs of a growing 21st century America. Now, I have a simple message for AASHTO today to all of you, my friends. And the message is basically to tell the truth. The unadulterated, unvarnished, unambiguous truth about where we are and where you are. Tell the truth to members of Congress about the cumulative effect of the short-term measures that have been passed in recent years and what it's doing to our planning processes. Tell the truth about projects that are being slowed or stopped because of uncertainty. Tell the truth about projects on your books that would create jobs and ease congestion and move us into the 21st century in a bold way. Tell the truth that the current funding levels are inadequate for a 2015 transportation system, much less a 2045 transportation system. You know, one of the things we saw in Beyond Traffic was, you know, for all the talk about the Highway Trust Fund and trying to stabilize it and get it solvent again, if we're just focused on that, we are not focused on results. CBO has done work to establish that just getting the Highway Trust Fund back to last year's levels will not do the trick in terms of getting us the maintenance we need. And if we're just focused on maintenance, that's not helping us address the new capacity we need. And frankly, because the pay-for is going to be such a difficult issue for Congress to deal with, as it has been in the past, I think we all ought to go together and just say, look, if you're going to go through the brain damage of trying to figure out how to do a little something, make it count. Let's make it count in 2015. The truth is a hard medicine. And frankly, I know that for state DOTs, this can be particularly challenging because when you start talking about projects that are endangered of being put on the shelf, there are local and state politics around some of those that can be painful. And yet, if we don't do that, the context isn't set as clearly and unambiguously in an unvarnished fashion as it should be. So my message to you, and I want to thank you all for coming into town to fan out to your members of Congress who really need to hear from you. Because frankly, I think that on a bipartisan basis, there is a strong interest in getting something done. I really believe that. But the question is what that something is going to be. And that's going to be directly in proportion to our ability to go out and really make the case that getting the Highway Trust Fund level is great from the standpoint of avoiding a crisis, but it is not great in the context of where this country needs to go. And that what we really need is a big, long bill. Over the last year, I've traveled to 42 states and nearly 100 cities and communities, large and small. And I'm prepared to do more. I will do more. But it is the efforts that you're undertaking here, frankly, that are as meaningful or more meaningful. And I always want to feel like we're fighting this battle together for the American people. So like I said, sometimes where you stand depends on where you sit. We're all joined at the hip. We're all seated together. Our futures are intertwined. Our department, your departments, your citizens, our citizens, they're all the same people. And so we must stand together at this time. And I don't think, frankly, we're going to face a lot of resistance in Congress in terms of wanting to do something. I think our job is to create the context in which it's not seen as courageous to do it, but the American public and our congressional leaders see it as the right thing to do. So thank you very much. It's great to be with you, and I look forward to more conversation.